History holds secrets that refuse to be solved. We are about to explore 25 ancient discoveries that defy every modern explanation, a collection of artifacts, structures, and phenomena that continue to baffle the world's top archaeologists and scientists. This is a journey through time where every clue leads to a deeper puzzle, from a 2,000-year-old astronomical computer to massive stone spheres whose purpose vanished with their creators. You will gain a front-row seat to the greatest unsolved mysteries of our past, seeing history not as a settled record, but as an ongoing detective story. How did a complex gear mechanism exist centuries before such technology should have been possible, and who carved a perfect underground city with no record of its construction? I invite you to become a detective alongside me, examining the evidence for yourself. What does it say about us that our past remains so stubbornly mysterious? It was discovered by sponge divers in the year 1901, resting in the silent dock of a 2,000-year-old Roman shipwreck off the coast of a Greek island. What they brought to the surface was a corroded lump of bronze and wood, so encrusted it seemed like little more than nautical debris. For decades, it sat in a museum drawer, a curiosity no one could understand. Then researchers began to look closer. X-rays and advanced imaging revealed the truth hidden beneath the corrosion, a truth that would rewrite our understanding of ancient genius. This was the Antikythera Mechanism. Inside that lump were more than 30 intricate bronze gears, meticulously interlocking with finely marked dials and tiny inscriptions. It was a machine of breathtaking complexity, a clockwork universe in a box. Modern experts have called it the world's first known analog computer. Its purpose was not to compute sums, but to predict the cosmos. By turning a hand crank, an ancient Greek could track the movements of the sun and the moon, predict lunar and solar eclipses, and even follow the positions of the planets known at the time. It modeled the irregular orbit of the moon with a special pin and slot device, a sophistication that would not be seen again in clockwork for over 1,000 years. And that is the heart of the mystery. This device dates to sometime between 250 and 100 years before the Common Era. Its engineering is so advanced, so precise, that it seems to have fallen out of time itself. We have no record of its invention, no sketches from its creator, no mentions in historical texts of such a marvelous device. Even more puzzling, we have found nothing like it for centuries after its creation. It appears in the historical record as a single, brilliant flash of technological lightning, with no storm before it and no rain after. Who built this? For whom was it made? Was it a unique masterpiece from a lone genius, or a glimpse into a level of Hellenistic technology we have simply lost to time? The Antikythera Mechanism forces us to confront a humbling idea that an ancient civilization could achieve a mechanical sophistication we never attributed to them, and then that knowledge could vanish as completely as the ship that carried it to the bottom of the sea. The Antikythera Mechanism stands as a monument to a technological path not taken, but another mystery hides not in gears and bronze, but in ink and vellum. In the rare books library of Yale University rests a volume that has defied understanding for centuries. This is the Voynich Manuscript, a book that looks like a medieval herbal or scientific text, yet is written entirely in a language that does not exist. Its approximately 240 vellum pages are filled from edge to edge with elegant, curling script, an alphabet of strange characters that form words and sentences following patterns that suggest a real language, but one no one on Earth can read. Carbon dating places its creation in the early 15th century, somewhere in Europe, but its author and purpose are utterly unknown. The text is only half the puzzle. The pages are lavishly illustrated with bizarre, otherworldly images. There are drawings of plants that no botanist can identify, with bulbous roots and leaves arranged in impossible patterns. There are intricate astrological charts featuring unfamiliar constellations and nude women bathing in a strange, interconnected system of green pools and tubes. There are cosmological diagrams of swirling galaxies that feel oddly prescient. For over 100 years, the world's top cryptographers, linguists, and mathematicians have tried to crack its code. Military codebreakers from both world wars, armed with techniques that unraveled enemy ciphers, were defeated by its pages. In recent years, powerful artificial intelligence systems, trained on thousands of languages, have analyzed its patterns only to produce gibberish or contradictory results. The theories are as wild as the illustrations themselves. Some argue it is an elaborate, meaningless hoax, a Renaissance-era forgery designed to fool a wealthy patron. Others believe it is a coded manual of forgotten herbal knowledge or alchemical secrets, its text a cipher for Latin or a rare dialect. The most speculative suggest it is a glimpse of a lost culture, or even a linguistic artifact from a mind that perceived the world in a way fundamentally different from our own. Every page turned is a confrontation with the limits of our knowledge. We can date the parchment, we can analyze the ink, but the message, the very why of its creation, remains locked away, a beautiful, frustrating ghost from the past. It is a book that holds a conversation, but we are forever on the outside, hearing only the murmur of a voice we cannot comprehend. Deep in the humid jungles of Costa Rica in the 1930s, workers clearing land for banana plantations made a startling discovery. Their blades struck not roots but stone, perfectly round and impossibly smooth. As they cleared more foliage, they found not one but dozens of these spheres, some small enough to hold, others colossal, standing as tall as a person and weighing up to 16 tons. These are the stone spheres of the Diquis, and their existence poses a silent, geometric challenge to history. They were crafted by a pre-Columbian people known as the Diquis culture, who thrived in the region from around 800 to 1500 of the Common Era. The sheer craftsmanship is what first baffles archaeologists. The spheres are carved from a hard stone called gabbro, and many are near mathematically perfect in their roundness. The precision is astonishing, especially when you consider the makers had no metal tools, no laser guides, no modern measuring devices. How did they achieve such symmetry? Experts believe it was a monumental feat of patience and skill. The process likely involved heating the stone surface with fire, then rapidly cooling it with water to cause flakes to split away, followed by endless hours of pecking and grinding with other, harder stones. This method could explain the shaping, but it does little to unravel the greater mystery. Why? What drove this culture to invest such immense labor into creating hundreds of these objects? The theories are as varied as the spheres themselves. Some researchers propose they were astronomical markers, arranged to point to celestial events or to mirror constellations. Others see them as symbols of power and status, perhaps lining the pathways to a chief's home or signifying important clan territories. A few suggest they held a religious or mythological meaning, representing the sun, the moon, or cosmic eggs. Tragically, we may never know for certain. In the decades following their discovery, many spheres were looted or violently relocated by people who saw them as mere curiosities. They were rolled away from their original positions using bulldozers, dragged to decorate government buildings and private gardens. This movement erased their archaeological context forever. We lost the crucial clues of how they were arranged in relation to each other or to structures, the very patterns that might have been their language. Today, they sit in parks and town squares, majestic yet mute. They are a powerful reminder that an artifact without its story is only half a mystery. We can admire their form, but their true purpose has rolled away into the jungle mist, leaving us with only the shape of a question. While the stone spheres stand as silent monuments of form, another ancient object whispers of a potential function so advanced it seems to defy its own time. In the basement of the National Museum of Iraq sits a simple, unassuming clay jar about the size of a man's fist. It was excavated from a 2,000-year-old site near Baghdad, dating back to the Parthian period, around 200 years before the Common Era to 200 years after. At first glance, it appears to be nothing special, just another piece of ancient pottery, but its contents tell a different story. Inside this jar, archaeologists found a copper cylinder, sealed at the bottom with asphalt, and within that cylinder, an iron rod. The arrangement was too deliberate, too specific to be an accident. In the 1930s, a German archaeologist named Wilhelm Koenig looked at this assembly and proposed a theory that sent shockwaves through the historical community. He suggested this was not a storage jar, but an ancient electric battery. The principle is that of a simple galvanic cell, the most basic form of a battery. If the jar was filled with an acidic or vinegary liquid like grape juice or vinegar, the electrolyte would react with the two different metals, the copper and the iron. This chemical reaction would create a small flow of electrons from one metal to the other, generating a tiny electrical current. The asphalt seal would have held the rod in place and insulated the components. Experiments with exact replicas have proven this works, consistently producing a low voltage, around 1 to 2 volts, enough to create a faint tingle or a very dim glow on a small light bulb. So what would a 2,000-year-old civilization do with such a subtle, weak current? The most compelling theory is electroplating, the process of using electricity to coat one metal with a thin layer of another, more precious metal. Artisans could have used a series of these Baghdad batteries, linked together, to deposit a fine layer of gold onto silver ornaments or statues, a technique that would explain the exquisite, uniform gilding found on some artifacts from the region that seems difficult to achieve by fire-based methods alone. Yet, the mystery is far from solved. The debate among scholars is intense and ongoing. The skeptical view holds that these jars were simply sacred storage vessels for important religious scrolls, with the iron rod acting as a protective core for rolled papyrus or parchment, and the asphalt as a seal against moisture. They argue that no wires, no electrodes, and no electroplated objects have ever been found in direct association with these jars. If they were batteries, where is the rest of the circuit? Proponents counter that organic materials like wires made of plant fibers or thin metal strips would have long since decayed, leaving no trace. They point to the very design, so perfectly suited for generating a current, as evidence of intent. This is the enduring puzzle of the Baghdad battery. It exists in that tantalizing space between coincidence and invention. It could have worked, and replicas do work, but we lack the smoking gun, the ancient workshop where these jars were lined up next to a craftsman applying gold leaf with their gentle, mysterious power. It forces us to wonder, did an ancient artisan stumble upon the secret of electricity, using it for a specific, beautiful purpose, only for that knowledge to be lost, waiting in a museum basement for us to rediscover and debate its true potential? The debate over ancient electricity fades into the stark silence of a Peruvian desert. Here, on the dry, windless plateau of Nazca, an entire civilization chose to write its message not on parchment, but on the very skin of the earth. Stretching across nearly 200 square miles of barren land are the Nazca Lines, a gallery of colossal art so vast it can only be fully comprehended from the sky. Created by the Nazca people between 500 years before the Common Era and 500 years after, these are not mere scratches in the dirt. They are precise geoglyphs, designs made by removing the dark, sun-baked surface stones to reveal the lighter-colored earth beneath. This technique, simple in concept, produced images of breathtaking scale and complexity. There are straight lines that run for miles, cutting across the landscape with ruler-straight precision. There are enormous geometric shapes, trapezoids and triangles that sprawl like giant landing pads. And most mesmerizing of all, there are the biomorphs, giant depictions of animals and plants. A hummingbird with wings outstretched over 300 feet. A spider, its legs perfectly articulated. a condor, a monkey with a spiraling tail, even what appears to be a humanoid figure often called the astronaut. For centuries, these masterpieces remained hidden, their true forms known only to the people who made them. It was not until the advent of modern aviation in the 1920s that pilots flying over the desert looked down and saw the full, staggering scope of the artwork. This fact alone ignites the central mystery. Why would a people who themselves could never see the complete picture invest such immense communal effort into creating art for an audience in the heavens? The theories are as grand as the lines themselves. One long-standing idea is that they served as a giant astronomical calendar, with the lines pointing to solstice sunrises or specific stars, guiding agricultural cycles in a harsh environment. Another suggests they were sacred pathways, walked during religious rituals to invoke water from the gods, the most precious resource in the desert. A more speculative notion, popularized in the mid-20th century, proposed they were landing strips or signals for extraterrestrial visitors, though archaeologists find no evidence to support this. The truth may be a combination of spiritual and practical purposes, a way to map the cosmos while pleading with it for survival. Just when we thought we had mapped the extent of this mystery, technology has revealed how much we have missed. In recent years, archaeologists using drones and satellite imagery have discovered hundreds of previously unknown lines and figures in adjacent valleys. These new geoglyphs are often older and include humanoid figures engaged in what appear to be scenes of ritual or combat. This explosion of new data does not solve the puzzle, it deepens it. It shows the practice was more widespread and varied than we ever imagined, a sustained cultural tradition spanning generations. Each new line discovered is another sentence in a long, sprawling letter written on the desert floor, a letter we can now see clearly but whose language we are still struggling to read. The creators left behind their vision in a form meant to last for millennia, and they succeeded. Yet they took the reason why with them, leaving us to gaze down from above, awestruck by the question etched into the earth. From the sprawling desert canvas of Nazca, our mystery shifts from land art to a different kind of map, one drawn on parchment and steeped in even deeper chronological confusion. In the year 1929, within the dusty archives of Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, a German theologian made a discovery that would ignite a century of fierce debate. He unearthed a world map drawn on gazelle skin in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral and cartographer named Piri Reis. The map itself was a beautiful artifact of its age, showing the known coasts of Europe, Africa, and the recently discovered Americas. But it was a detail at its southern edge that sent chills through researchers. There, sketched below the Atlantic Ocean, was a landmass with a distinctive, jagged coastline. To many who examined it, this land bore a startling resemblance to the coastline of Queen Maud Land in Antarctica, but with one impossible detail: it was depicted free of ice. The problem, of course, is one of time. Antarctica as a continent was not officially sighted until 1820, 3 centuries after Piri Reis put ink to skin. And its coastal features have been buried under a mile-thick sheet of ice for at least 6,000 years, far longer than recorded human history. So how could a 16th century Ottoman admiral have charted a land no one knew existed and shown it as it looked millennia before his own birth? Piri Reis himself provided a clue in the extensive notes written on the map's margins. He openly stated that his work was a compilation, drawn from many source maps, including those captured from Spanish and Portuguese sailors, and most intriguingly, from what he called very old charts dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. This admission is the heart of the mystery. Did Piri Reis have access to ancient source maps, now lost to history, that preserved geographic knowledge from a pre-Ice Age civilization sophisticated enough to survey the globe? Proponents of this theory point to the map's startling accuracy in some areas, like the profile of South America, and argue that the southern landmass is too specific to be mere guesswork or a fanciful invention. They overlay the Piri Rise depiction with modern seismic surveys of the subglacial topography of Antarctica, and the correlations, while not perfect, are undeniably provocative. The skeptics, however, offer a more conventional, though still fascinating, explanation. They argue the mysterious land is not Antarctica at all, but a distorted, composite representation of the southern coast of South America, pieced together from the conflicting and often fantastical reports of early explorers. The jagged coastline, they suggest, could be the misaligned peninsulas of Patagonia, or even a speculative Terra Australis, the great southern continent that European cartographers had long believed must exist to balance the northern landmasses. This scholarly battle is fought over every ink stroke. Is the map a miraculous fragment of lost ancient science, a ghost of a forgotten seafaring culture that mapped the world in an antediluvian age? Or is it a brilliant but flawed product of its own time, a patchwork of rumor, measurement, and imagination that we later misinterpret through the lens of our modern knowledge? The Piri Rise map forces us to confront the fragility of history. It is a palimpsest, a document written over the erased texts of older ones. We can see the admiral's hand, but the shadows behind his work, the sources he consulted, have vanished. Whether it shows Antarctica or not, the map is a testament to the fact that our past is not a single story, but a collection of fragments, and sometimes those fragments hint at chapters we never knew were written. The silence of forgotten history is sometimes carved in stone, not drawn on maps. In 1992, in the Chinese province of Zhejiang, a curious farmer decided to pump the water out of what he thought was a small, insignificant pond. As the water level dropped, he did not find a muddy bottom. Instead, he revealed the entrance to an enormous, breathtaking, and utterly mysterious underground world. This was the first of the Longyu Caves, a sprawling complex of at least 24 hand-carved caverns that had been hidden beneath the water and earth for centuries. Stepping inside is like entering the belly of a stone giant. The scale is almost incomprehensible. Each cave is a vast man-made grotto, some reaching heights of 100 feet, with floors that span over 10,000 square feet. The ceilings are supported by massive, evenly spaced pillars of solid rock, left in place by the carvers, and every single surface, the walls, the pillars, the soaring ceilings, is covered in a uniform pattern of parallel chisel marks, a meticulous, swirling design that runs in perfectly straight lines from floor to ceiling. This is not rough excavation. This is architecture of the highest order, executed with a disciplined artistic vision. The engineering challenge alone is staggering. Modern geologists have calculated that to create these 24 known caverns, ancient workers would have had to remove nearly 1 million cubic meters of solid sandstone. That is a volume of stone equivalent to a small mountain. They did this with simple hand tools, likely iron chisels and hammers, working in near-total darkness save for the flicker of oil lamps. The logistics boggle the mind. Where did they put all that rubble? How did they organize hundreds, perhaps thousands of laborers? How did they maintain such precise angles and avoid collapse? Yet, for all this monumental effort, history is completely, deafeningly silent. There is no record of their construction in any Chinese historical text, no local legend passed down through generations, no mention in poetry or official records. Carbon dating of organic material in the caves suggests they were carved around 2,200 years ago, during the Western Han Dynasty, a period of well-documented history. But these caves, a project that would have dwarfed the construction of most palaces of the era, have left not a single written trace. So what were they for? The theories are as vast as the caverns themselves. The most obvious guess is a quarry. The uniform sandstone could have been valuable for building, but this explanation quickly crumbles under scrutiny. A quarry is utilitarian, designed to extract as much stone as easily as possible. the Longyu caves are the opposite. The intricate, decorative chisel marks serve no purpose for stone extraction. They are purely aesthetic, a massive waste of labor if you just want blocks of rock. Furthermore, the pillars are left not as supports to prevent collapse during work, but as permanent, integral architectural features. If it was a quarry, why leave so much usable stone behind in the form of pillars and thick walls? Other theories propose they were imperial tombs or secret storage facilities, yet no artifacts, no burial goods, not a single scrap of evidence for any use has ever been found inside. The floors are clean, swept bare by time. Some researchers look to the acoustics. The caves possess remarkable sound properties, where a whisper at one end can be heard clearly at the other. Could they have been used for ritual or ceremonial gatherings? Their carved walls designed to amplify chants or music, perhaps, but again, the silence persists. The greatest mystery of the Longyu caves may not be how they were built, but why their memory was so completely erased. A project of such magnitude required the will of an emperor or a powerful state, the kind of undertaking that gets recorded, celebrated, and remembered. Instead, it was sealed and forgotten, deliberately flooded and hidden. Was it a failed project abandoned in disgrace, a secret so profound its very existence had to be concealed? We are left standing in these echoing halls of stone, surrounded by the evidence of immense human will, staring at millions of deliberate chisel strokes and hearing only the echo of our own questions. While the Longyu caves represent a mystery of immense, hidden labor, another ancient puzzle lies completely in the open, yet its meaning is just as sealed away. In a field in West Dunbartonshire, Scotland, a massive slab of rock lies buried beneath the earth. This is the Cochno stone, a 5,000-year-old canvas of swirling, hypnotic mystery. When it was last fully exposed, it revealed a surface over 40 feet long, completely covered in deep, intricate carvings known as cup and ring marks. These are not random scratches. They consist of a central hemispherical cup mark, surrounded by concentric rings that ripple outward, often connected by winding, gut-like channels that snake across the stone. Alongside these are spirals, geometric patterns, and footprints carved in pairs. The sheer density of the artwork is overwhelming, a complex language of symbols etched with purpose over generations. This stone is a Neolithic masterpiece, a direct message from a people who lived millennia before written history in Britain, and that is the core of the problem. We have the message, but we have lost the dictionary. What were these people trying to say? The theories are as fascinating as the patterns themselves. Some archaeologists see it as a celestial map, with the cups and rings representing stars, constellations, or even supernova witnessed by ancient sky watchers. The connecting channels could trace cosmic events or mythological journeys across the heavens. Others propose a deeply spiritual function, suggesting the stone was a sacred portal or an interface with the underworld. The act of carving or touching the symbols, perhaps while pouring offerings of water, milk, or blood into the cup marks, might have been a ritual to commune with ancestors or deities. The paired footprints add a powerful human element, possibly signifying an initiation rite or symbolizing the presence of a divine being standing upon the stone. For decades, the stone faced a modern threat more destructive than time. After its excavation in the 1930s, it became a target for vandalism, with people adding their own modern graffiti and causing damage. To protect it, archaeologists made a difficult but necessary decision. In 1965, they reburied the entire stone, covering this priceless artwork with soil to save it from further harm. For half a century, the Cochno stone slept beneath the grass, its secrets literally hidden from view. But the story does not end there. In recent years, technology has offered a way to peer beneath the earth without lifting a shovel. Using advanced three-dimensional laser scanning and drone photography, a team from the University of Glasgow has created a phenomenally detailed digital model of the entire stone surface. This process preserves every minute detail, every depth of a cup mark and curve of a ring, allowing researchers to study the stone in ways never before possible without risking a single new scratch. They can overlay lighting to simulate the sun at different seasons, analyze the order of the carvings, and search for patterns invisible to the naked eye. The scan is a time capsule, a perfect digital twin. Yet, even with this incredible tool, the symbols refuse to speak in a language we understand. The Kochno stone embodies a profound truth about ancient mysteries. We can now preserve them with perfect fidelity. We can examine them from every angle, but without the cultural context, the living belief system that gave them life, they remain breathtakingly beautiful locks for which we have no key. The stone is a testament to a human urge to make marks, to communicate something vital about our place in the cosmos, an urge that echoes across 5,000 years, clear in its intensity but silent in its specific meaning. The desire to leave a mark seems written into our very bones, but what if the first great monuments were not built by settled farmers but by nomadic hunters? On a windswept hill in southeastern Turkey, a discovery has shattered the foundational story of human civilization. This is Gobekli Tepe, a complex of massive stone circles built over 11,000 years ago, a staggering 7 millennia before the Great Pyramids of Giza and 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. For decades, archaeologists taught a simple, logical progression. First, humans learned to farm, creating a stable food surplus. This surplus allowed for specialization, leading to complex societies, hierarchy, and only then, the leisure and labor force required to build monumental architecture. Gobekli Tepe stands this theory completely on its head. Here, at the very dawn of the Neolithic period, bands of hunter-gatherers who had not yet domesticated plants or animals accomplished a feat of engineering and artistry that seems impossible for their way of life. They quarried, shaped, and transported enormous limestone pillars, some weighing over 10 tons, from local quarries. They erected these pillars in great circular formations, with 2 even larger central pillars towering up to 18 feet tall. And then they covered these pillars in breathtaking, high-relief carvings. This is not crude graffiti. The stones are adorned with a menagerie of precise and powerful animals: foxes, scorpions, lions, snakes, and wild boars, all rendered with an artistic skill and anatomical understanding that feels utterly modern. The sophistication is undeniable, but the purpose is a profound mystery. There is no evidence of permanent settlement at the site, no houses, hearths, or trash pits for daily living. Instead, the archaeology points to a purely ritualistic, ceremonial function, a sacred hill where scattered groups would gather at specific times. This transforms our understanding of human motivation. It suggests that the driving force behind our first great collective projects was not economics, not the need to store grain, but something deeper, a shared spiritual or social impulse. The need to come together, to create a shared identity and a place to enact beliefs, may have been the spark that eventually led to settled life, not the other way around. And then, as mysteriously as it was built, Gobekli Tepe was deliberately buried. Around 8,000 years before the Common Era, its creators carefully filled in the entire complex with tons of soil and rubble, preserving it perfectly for millennia until its rediscovery in the 1990s. Why would they entomb their own masterpiece? Was it a ritual closing, a way to sanctify the site forever? Or did the belief system that demanded its construction change, requiring its sacred power to be sealed away? Gobekli Tepe forces a humbling rewrite of our origins. It presents a world where hunters, following migratory herds, paused their journeys to heave stones into circles and carve visions of their world into rock, building a temple before they ever built a city. Yet the human fascination with flight seems to have ancient roots far beyond those stone circles. Within a tomb at Saqqara, the vast necropolis of ancient Memphis in Egypt, a small wooden artifact was discovered that looks startlingly out of time. Known as the Saqqara bird, this delicate object dates to approximately 200 years before the Common Era. At first glance in a museum case, it resembles a stylized bird, but a closer look reveals peculiar features that set it apart from typical avian art. Its wings are straight, sleek, and angled, unlike the rounded wings of a bird in flight. More strikingly, it lacks the legs and feet that Egyptian artisans always included on bird figurines. Instead, it possesses a distinctive vertical tail fin, a feature no bird on Earth has. This tail fin is flat and perpendicular to the wings, looking less like a feather and more like the stabilizing rudder on the tail of a modern airplane. The overall shape is uncanny. It looks less like a creature of nature and more like a model of a monoplane glider. This simple piece of carved wood has ignited a decades-long debate. Was it merely a child's toy, a ceremonial object for the afterlife, or could it be something more? In the 1960s, an Egyptian doctor and aviation enthusiast named Khalil Messiha studied the artifact and became convinced it was a scale model of a working glider. He noted its aerodynamic profile with wings designed to generate lift and that crucial tail fin for lateral stability. Intrigued, he and others built scaled-up, weighted replicas of the Saqqara bird, and in tests these models did indeed fly. When launched with a little thrust, they could glide for considerable distances, demonstrating stable and efficient aerodynamic properties. This discovery fueled dramatic speculation. Could the ancient Egyptians have observed the principles of flight? Might this have been a model for a larger manned craft, its knowledge lost to time? The idea taps into a deep well of mystery, suggesting a forgotten chapter of technological experimentation. However, the mainstream view from Egyptologists offers a more grounded, though still fascinating, interpretation. They point out that the artifact was found among a cache of other wooden bird models, all of which had legs except this one. Its uniqueness could simply be an accident of preservation. Perhaps the legs were broken off and lost. They argue it is most likely a stylized representation of a falcon, a bird sacred to the god Horus, and its straight wings could reflect artistic convention or the type of wood used. The vertical tail, they suggest, might represent a stylized feather or a base that was once inserted into a stand for display. The debate itself is a perfect encapsulation of how we confront the ambiguous relics of the past. We have an object that, when viewed through a modern lens, seems to predict a technology millennia ahead of its time. Its form suggests function, and modern tests prove that function works. Yet, without a single corroborating text, diagram, or other artifact pointing to any ancient Egyptian experimentation with aviation, it remains an isolated anomaly. Is the Saqqara bird a profound coincidence of design, a toy that accidentally harnessed physics its maker did not understand? Or is it a silent, wooden whisper that the dream of flight is far older than we ever documented? It sits at that tantalizing intersection, an artifact that refuses to be just one thing, forever inviting us to look up and wonder what its creator truly saw. A different kind of hammer was discovered in the summer of 1936, not in a toolbox but embedded in solid stone. While hiking near London, Texas, a couple noticed a curious piece of rock with what looked like a chunk of wood protruding from it. They took it home and later cracked it open, revealing an object that would become a legendary piece of fringe archaeology known as the London Hammer. Inside was an iron hammerhead fused seamlessly to a partially petrified wooden handle, all completely encased within a concretion of ancient limestone. The startling claim came from the rock itself. When the surrounding stone was later analyzed, some tests indicated it was from the Cretaceous period, a geological era dating back over 100 million years, the age of the dinosaurs. The implication, seized upon by some creationist groups, was explosive. Here was a modern-looking tool, they argued, found in rock formed when humans should not have existed. It was presented as physical proof that our historical timeline was fundamentally wrong, that humans and dinosaurs walked the earth together. The image is undeniably compelling, a manufactured object seemingly trapped in prehistoric stone, defying every textbook. The scientific explanation, however, unravels this mystery through geology rather than time travel. The key is understanding the process of concretion. In certain mineral-rich environments, especially around ancient springs or streams, objects can become nuclei for the accumulation of dissolved minerals like calcium carbonate. Layer by microscopic layer, these minerals precipitate out of the water, building a hard, stony shell around anything that sits there long enough, be it a shell, a bone, or a lost hammer. This process does not take millions of years. It can happen in centuries or even decades under the right conditions. The hammer, experts argue, is likely a few hundred years old at most, perhaps a miner's tool dropped in the 19th century. The iron head, of a style common in the 1800s, would have quickly begun to rust. The acidic water from the local iron-rich soil would have then dissolved the surrounding minerals, which later re-solidified around the tool, creating a hard limestone jacket that made it appear far older than it truly was. The wooden handle, preserved by the mineral-rich environment, began the slow process of petrification. The greatest challenge with the London hammer, however, is its provenance. It was not discovered by archaeologists in a documented dig. It was found by hikers, removed from its original setting, and its exact geological context was lost. In archaeology, context is everything. It is the story of where an object was found, what soil layer it rested in, and what other artifacts were nearby. Without that documented context, an object becomes a floating mystery, its story easily rewritten. This artifact stands at the crossroads of two very different ways of seeing the past. For some, it is a defiant anomaly that challenges established science. For geologists, it is a fascinating but perfectly natural demonstration of concretion, a process that can make a relatively recent object look impossibly ancient. The London hammer does not prove humans lived with dinosaurs, but it does powerfully prove how easily we can misinterpret the past when we find a fragment of its story without the surrounding pages. The story of the London hammer is a lesson in context, but what happens when the context itself seems to vanish into thin air? In 1938, an expedition led by a Chinese archaeologist named Kai Pu-Te ventured into the remote Bayon Karaula Mountains near the Tibet border. Their goal was to explore a series of interconnected caves, but what they reportedly found inside would spiral into one of the most persistent and controversial legends of the 20th century. Scattered across the cave floors were hundreds of unusual stone discs, each roughly 9 inches in diameter and 3/4 of an inch thick. At their center was a perfectly round hole, and spiraling out from it to the outer edge was a fine, continuous groove, a tiny channel that gave them the appearance of ancient phonograph records. These were the so-called Dropa stones. The initial reports were strange enough, but the legend grew far stranger. Years later, a story emerged claiming that a professor named Tsum Nui had managed to decipher the microscopic hieroglyphic-like characters etched along those spiral grooves. The alleged translation told a fantastic tale. It described a spacecraft from a distant star that crashed in the mountains 12,000 years ago. The survivors, a people called the Dropa, could not repair their ship and were stranded on Earth, eventually intermingling with local tribes. The stones, the story went, were their recorded history. This narrative exploded into popular culture, becoming a cornerstone of ancient astronaut theory and a classic tale of prehistoric alien contact. It is a compelling, cinematic mystery, but here the line between an unsolved puzzle and a manufactured myth becomes critically thin. The scientific community has treated the Dropa stones with extreme, almost uniform skepticism, and for concrete reasons. The first and greatest problem is the evidence, or rather, the complete lack of it. Despite the dramatic claims, not a single verified Dropa stone has ever been placed on display in a reputable museum or made available for independent, peer-reviewed study. The original discoverer, Kai Pu Te, is a shadowy figure with no other documented archaeological work. The translating professor, Tsum Nui, appears in no academic records in China. The few photographs that exist are grainy and could depict any number of carved stone artifacts. In essence, the entire story rests on anecdotal accounts that emerged decades after the supposed discovery, passed along through sensational books and magazine articles. Most archaeologists and historians classify the Dropa stones as a modern myth, a fascinating example of how a rumor can harden into accepted lore within certain circles. The stones themselves may have a mundane explanation. They could be by discs, a type of ancient Chinese ceremonial jade artifact, or perhaps even stone spindle whorls used in weaving. The spiral groove could be a natural weathering pattern or a result of their function. The Dropa legend highlights a crucial tension in the world of ancient mysteries. We are drawn to stories that shatter our understanding of history, tales of lost civilizations and extraterrestrial visitors. Yet this very desire can make us vulnerable to stories that are simply too good to be true, narratives constructed from fragments, hearsay, and a powerful dose of imagination. The Dropa stones serve not as proof of ancient astronauts, but as a cautionary tale about the need for verifiable evidence, reminding us that the most enduring mysteries are those grounded in physical artifacts we can actually hold and study, not just in stories we wish were real. A single coin can carry the weight of an entire continent. In 1957, at an archaeological site on the coast of Maine known as the Goddard Site, a team was sifting through layers of earth that held centuries of Native American history. Among the stone tools and pottery shards, one volunteer found a small, dirty disc of metal, no bigger than a thumbnail. After a careful cleaning, it revealed itself not as a colonial button or a modern penny, but as a silver coin from medieval Norway, minted between 1065 and 1080. This is the main penny, and its discovery sent a shockwave through the study of early American history. Here was a genuine Norse artifact, over 800 years old, found far to the south of the only confirmed Viking settlement in North America at Elance Oaks Meadows in Newfoundland. The coin itself is a fascinating object. On one side is the image of a king holding a scepter and a cross on the other, a stylized long cross pattern common to the period. It is not a rare coin in a European context, but in the soil of a pre-Columbian Wabanaki site in Maine, it is utterly unique. Its presence whispers of possibilities that challenge the traditional narrative of transatlantic contact. The most tantalizing theory is direct exploration. Could Norse voyagers from their base in Vinland have sailed further south along the Atlantic coast, perhaps trading or even making landfall in what is now New England? The sagas speak of journeys to a place called Hvitramanaland, a legendary land of the white men, but these are vague and unverified. The coin could be physical proof of those southward voyages, a lost piece of pocket change from a Viking explorer. Yet the evidence for this is frustratingly thin. No other Norse artifacts, no ship remains, no structures have ever been found anywhere along the northeastern United States coast. The coin stands alone. This isolation points powerfully to the second, and perhaps more likely, explanation: indigenous trade networks. The Goddard site was a major trading hub for native peoples for centuries. Goods traveled vast distances along these ancient routes, from the Gulf of Mexico to the Arctic. It is entirely plausible that this Norse coin, acquired through trade at Elance Oaks Meadows or another northern point of contact, began an extraordinary journey southward. It could have been passed from hand to hand, tribe to tribe, over generations, moving hundreds of miles from its origin as a curiosity, a piece of exotic raw silver or a pendant, long before it was finally lost in Maine. This theory turns the coin from evidence of a Viking in Maine into evidence of the incredible reach and complexity of pre-Columbian trade. The debate is heated because the stakes are high for our understanding of history. If the coin arrived through trade, it is a stunning testament to the interconnectedness of the ancient Americas. If it was dropped by a Norse explorer, it rewrites the map of Viking exploration. The problem is, we will probably never know for sure. The coin was found by an amateur in a disturbed layer of soil, making its precise archaeological context difficult to interpret with absolute certainty. It remains a magnificent, singular anomaly, a tiny silver question mark buried in the New England earth. It proves contact happened in the north, but it leaves us wondering just how far the ripples of that contact spread, carried on Viking ships or in the hands of native traders. A single coin can travel through time, but some objects seem to defy the very timeline they are found within. In the mineral mines of South Africa, workers have for decades been pulling strange, metallic spheres from deep geological layers. These are the Klerksdorp spheres, small objects no larger than a walnut, often with a dark, lustrous sheen. Their appearance is what first captures the imagination. Many are perfectly round or nearly so, and some are etched with 3 parallel grooves running around their equator, lines so straight and precise they look machined. The most startling detail, however, is their age. They are not found in recent soil, but embedded within mineral deposits of pyrophyllite, a rock dated to a staggering 2.8 billion years old. To put that in perspective, this is a time when the only life on Earth was single-celled microbes in the primordial oceans. The claim, made popular in books and documentaries, is dramatic. These spheres, with their symmetrical shape and manufactured-looking grooves, are presented as artifacts from an impossibly ancient, non-human civilization, or even as evidence of extraterrestrial visitors in Earth's deep past. They are held up as physical proof that our geological and evolutionary timelines are completely wrong. The image is powerful, a tiny, grooved metal ball from a time before multicellular life, looking for all the world like a component from a forgotten machine. The scientific explanation, however, reveals a different kind of wonder, one rooted in the patient, chaotic artistry of geology. These spheres are not manufactured. They are natural formations known as concretions. In the ancient, mineral-rich sediments, a small particle, perhaps a grain of sand or a fleck of organic matter, acted as a nucleus. Over eons, minerals like pyrite, also known as fool's gold, slowly crystallized around this nucleus in all directions, creating a spherical shape. This process is not unique. Concretions of all shapes and sizes are found worldwide. The mesmerizing grooves are not precision tool marks, but the result of a natural weathering process. The spheres are often composed of 2 different minerals, a hard inner core of pyrite and a softer outer shell of another mineral like hematite. As they weathered over billions of years, the softer outer material wore away more quickly, leaving the harder inner ridges exposed as those distinctive parallel lines. The apparent perfection of their roundness is also a natural outcome of uniform crystal growth radiating from a central point. The Klerksdorp spheres teach us a crucial lesson about perception. The human mind is a pattern-seeking engine, exquisitely tuned to recognize design and intention. When we see parallel lines and perfect circles, we instinctively think maker. But nature, through the slow, mindless processes of chemistry and erosion, is a master sculptor in its own right, capable of producing shapes of breathtaking symmetry and complexity that mimic our own handiwork. This mystery, then, is not about a lost civilization, but about the line between the artificial and the natural. It challenges us to look deeper, to understand the processes that can, given enough time, create objects that appear crafted. The spheres are not alien artifacts, but they are alien in their own way, messengers from an Earth so ancient its very geology can play tricks on our modern eyes, reminding us that reality is often stranger than the stories we try to fit it into. The line between natural wonder and human creation blurs completely beneath the waves of the East China Sea. Off the coast of Japan's remote Yonaguni Island, in clear blue water just 80 feet deep, lies a structure that looks like a sunken step pyramid. This is the Yonaguni Monument, a massive underwater rock formation that has sparked one of the most heated debates in modern archaeology. Discovered in the 1980s by a local diver, the monument is a staggering sight. It rises from the seafloor like a giant staircase with sharp, flat terraces, near-perfect 90-degree angles, and what appear to be wide, straight staircases ascending its sides. One face features two tall, parallel pillars. Another shows a distinct circular depression. Most strikingly, some divers and researchers point to formations on the rock that resemble crude, weathered faces like the moai of Easter Island staring out from the aquatic gloom. The sheer scale and geometry make it feel undeniably architectural, a colossal complex drowned by rising seas at the end of the last ice age over 10,000 years ago. Proponents of a human origin, led by figures like Professor Masaki Kimura, argue this is the work of a lost civilization. They highlight features that seem too precise to be random: the flat platforms that could be plazas, the straight, narrow channels that look like roads, and the twin pillars that could have supported a massive gate. They draw comparisons to known megalithic sites, like the rock-cut tombs of ancient Anatolia or the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, noting the similar use of terraces and right angles. Some even connect it to the legendary lost continent of Mu, a Pacific counterpart to Atlantis, suggesting Yonaguni could be a surviving remnant of a drowned world. The idea is captivating: a sunken city holding secrets from a time when sea levels were dramatically lower. Yet many geologists offer a powerful counter-argument. They see not a city, but an extraordinary example of natural sandstone weathering. The rock at Yonaguni is sedimentary, with strong horizontal layers that naturally fracture along straight plains. The powerful tidal currents in this region, they explain, act like a relentless sandblaster, eroding the softer stone along these natural joints and leaving behind the harder layers, which then form those dramatic, step-like terraces and sharp edges. The apparent faces and pillars could be the result of random fractures and marine erosion, a classic case of pareidolia where our brains impose familiar patterns on natural shapes. They point to similar, undisputed natural formations on the nearby coastline, created by the same forces that look almost as geometric as the underwater monument. So, which is it, a man-made relic of a forgotten epoch or a masterpiece of natural sculpture? The debate is so intense because both sides are looking at the same evidence and seeing different stories. Geologists see the predictable, magnificent hand of physics and time. Archaeologists and alternative researchers see the intentional, if weathered, hand of human beings. The truth may lie somewhere in the middle. It is possible that the formation is entirely natural, but was later modified or used by ancient peoples, a sacred natural site they enhanced with their own carvings. Without definitive proof like pottery, tools, or inscriptions found in direct association with the structure, the mystery remains suspended in the clear Pacific water. Diving at Yonaguni is an eerie experience, swimming through what feels like the ruins of a plaza or the steps of a temple, all while knowing that the very stones beneath you might be whispering not of human kings, but of ocean currents and the slow, patient work of the sea. The ocean's geological debate finds a sharp contrast in a small, polished artifact that seems to carry impossible knowledge. In a private collection in Colombia sits a curious object known as the genetic disc. Carved from a hard, black stone called lyddite, this disc is roughly the diameter of a dinner plate and only a few centimeters thick. Its surface is not decorated with gods or animals, but with something far more intimate and scientifically precise, detailed biological imagery. One side clearly shows a human fetus in various stages of development, curled in the womb. Nearby, unmistakable images of sperm cells with their distinct heads and tails are etched alongside depictions of male and female genitalia. The other side displays what appear to be human cells in the process of division, showing the chromosomes aligning and separating, a process called mitosis. The precision is startling, depicting microscopic biological processes that were not understood by modern science until the invention of powerful microscopes in the 17th century. The controversy erupts from its alleged origin. The disc is said to be a pre-Columbian artifact created by a culture like the Muisca or another ancient Columbian civilization long before European contact. If true, the implications are staggering. It would suggest that an ancient people possessed an advanced, almost modern understanding of human reproduction, embryology, and cellular biology, knowledge that should have been utterly impossible for them to observe or conceptualize. This has made the genetic disk a cornerstone for proponents of ancient astronaut theory and lost high civilizations who argue it is proof of either extraterrestrial guidance or a forgotten epoch of scientific achievement. However, mainstream archaeologists and historians dismiss the disk almost entirely, and their skepticism hinges on one critical flaw: provenance. The disk was not excavated by scientists. It was looted. It appeared on the antiquities market without any documentation of where it was found, what soil layer it came from, or what other artifacts were nearby. In the world of archaeology, an object without a secure context is an object without a story we can trust. It cannot be dated using carbon dating or associated with a specific culture through pottery styles or building layers. It is, in essence, a beautiful mystery floating in historical limbo. Experts argue it could easily be a modern creation, a clever hoax carved by a skilled artisan with a 20th century biology textbook for reference, then artificially aged to be sold as a priceless antiquity. The debate over the genetic disk is ultimately a debate about evidence versus wonder. It presents an image that feels impossibly anachronistic, a direct challenge to our timeline of scientific progress. Yet without that anchor of a documented discovery, it remains an intriguing question mark, a story that is compelling to believe but impossible with our current knowledge to verify. It reminds us that for every artifact that changes history, there are a dozen that simply tempt us to rewrite it ourselves. Buried alongside the bones of extinct giants, a small metal object seemed to rewrite the rules of chemistry. In 1974, construction workers digging a trench along the Mureș River in Aiud, Romania, unearthed something startling. About 35 feet down in a layer of sand and clay, they found the fossilized remains of a mastodon, a prehistoric elephant-like creature. Nestled beside those ancient bones was a heavy, wedge-shaped piece of metal coated in a thick layer of hardened sand. Initially dismissed as perhaps a stone tool, it was cleaned and analyzed, revealing a composition that made no historical sense. This was the Aiud wedge, and it was made almost entirely of aluminum. This fact alone is the core of a deep chronological puzzle. Aluminum is the most abundant metal in the Earth's crust, but it is never found in its pure metallic form in nature. It is always tightly bonded with other elements in compounds like bauxite. To separate it, to get the shiny, lightweight metal we know, requires a complex industrial process called electrolysis, which involves passing a powerful electric current through molten ore. This technology was not invented until the 1880s. The wedge, however, was reportedly found in a geological layer alongside mastodon remains, suggesting an age of at least 11,000 years, from a time when humans were using stone and bone. How could a nearly pure aluminum object exist millennia before the means to produce it? The analysis deepened the mystery. The wedge was not pure aluminum. It was an alloy composed of 89% aluminum with smaller amounts of copper, zinc, lead, and other trace elements. This specific mix of metals is unusual, not matching standard modern industrial aluminum alloys, but it is undeniably a sophisticated metallurgical product. The surface also showed signs of mechanical wear and impact damage, as if it had been part of a larger machine or tool that was subjected to great force. The competing explanations for this anomaly represent a classic clash between orthodox archaeology and tantalizing possibility. The mainstream and most scientifically likely theory is one of intrusion. The wedge, they argue, is a much more recent object that simply found its way down into older layers. It could be a fragment of a modern mining drill bit, a tractor tooth from 20th century excavation equipment, or a piece of World War II aircraft that fell and was buried. Over time, through animal burrowing, root action, or shifting sediments, it descended and became mixed with the mastodon bones, creating a false association. This process, where newer material contaminates an older archaeological layer, is a well-documented challenge in the field. The other, far more radical theory asks us to consider the wedge at face value. Could it be genuine evidence of a lost, advanced metallurgical technique? Proponents of this view point to the unique alloy composition and the artifacts wear patterns as evidence it served a specific heavy-duty function. They ask, if it is a simple tractor tooth from the 1900s, why does its alloy not match any known common industrial grade? Why was it found so deep and in such an isolated context? The possibility, however remote, hangs in the air that an unknown culture might have discovered a way, perhaps through chemical rather than electrolytic means, to produce aluminum long before it was officially invented. The Aod wedge remains an enigma because it perfectly encapsulates the struggle between evidence and context. We have the physical object with its perplexing composition. But the story of its discovery, like so many of these finds, is clouded. It was not excavated by archaeologists in a controlled dig. It was found by construction workers, and its exact stratigraphic position was not meticulously documented by professionals. This lack of a pristine, scientifically recorded context leaves the door open for both interpretations. It forces us to ask a difficult question. Do we dismiss it as a modern intruder because it does not fit our timeline? Or do we allow the possibility, however slim, that our timeline might have a few missing pages? The wedge does not provide an answer, only a heavy, metallic question mark. The debate over ancient metallurgy often hinges on interpreting a single object, but a far larger mystery is baked into the very bricks of a forgotten city. In the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro, one of the great centers of the ancient Indus Valley civilization, a strange phenomenon has fueled speculation for decades. Among the meticulously laid mud bricks and carefully planned streets, some sections of the city show stones and pottery that appear melted and fused together, their surfaces glazed into a glassy, vitrified crust. This glassification, a process that requires temperatures exceeding 1,200 degrees Celsius, is startling in a 4,000-year-old urban center. The most dramatic interpretation, popularized in the mid-20th century, pointed to a terrifying cause, an ancient nuclear explosion. Proponents of this theory argued that the vitrified material, the apparent epicenter of destruction in one part of the city, and even some skeletal remains found in contorted positions, were evidence of a catastrophic high-tech attack, perhaps from a lost civilization or even extraterrestrial visitors. They drew comparisons to the fused sand or trinitite created at the Trinity nuclear test site in New Mexico, seeing a direct and ominous parallel. The idea captured the imagination, weaving a narrative of a sophisticated metropolis wiped out by a weapon from the gods, a story that felt both ancient and chillingly modern. Mainstream archaeology, however, offers a constellation of more grounded, though equally fascinating, explanations. Mohenjo-Daro was a city of industry. Archaeologists have uncovered numerous kilns and furnaces used for pottery, metalworking, and brick-making. A major fire, whether accidental or resulting from conflict, spreading through tightly packed neighborhoods filled with such industrial areas, could have created localized infernos hot enough to vitrify materials. Over centuries, the repeated use of kilns in the same location could have baked the surrounding ground and rubble into a glassy slag. Furthermore, natural weathering processes in the region's harsh climate, combined with chemical reactions from salts and minerals in the bricks themselves, can create crusts that resemble vitrification. The contorted skeletons are more likely evidence of a violent end from conventional warfare or a sudden disaster like flooding rather than radiation. The persistence of the nuclear myth speaks to a powerful human tendency to see the fingerprints of advanced, often catastrophic, technology on the ruins of the past. It transforms a complex archaeological site, which shows evidence of a long decline due to ecological and social changes, into a single, sensational event. The vitrified ruins of Mohenjo-Daro are not evidence of atomic warfare, but they are evidence of something else: how easily we project our own modern fears and wonders onto the silent stones of history, preferring a spectacular mystery to the slower, more intricate truth of a civilization's rise and fall. High on the wall of a dark Egyptian temple, a strange scene seems to flicker with anachronistic light. Within the Hathor temple at Dendera, a stone relief carved over 2,000 years ago shows a surreal image. A large, elongated object shaped like a stretched-out pear is held aloft by a pillar. Inside this object, a snake stretches its body in a straight line from one end to the other, its head touching the narrow tip. The snake appears to be emerging from a lotus flower at the wider base, and the entire assembly is connected by a cable-like cord to a box, upon which stands a baboon god and an air god with upraised arms. To a modern eye, conditioned by the technology of the last century, the interpretation leaps out instantly. This looks like a giant light bulb. The pear-shaped object is the glass bulb, the snake is the glowing filament, the cable is an electrical wire, and the box is a power source or battery guarded by deities. It is a compelling, electrifying idea, suggesting the ancient Egyptians might have harnessed electric light, illuminating their deepest tombs and temples with a technology we thought was ours alone. This interpretation, known as the Dendera light hypothesis, transforms the temple wall into a schematic diagram from a lost physics text. Proponents point to the absence of soot in many deep subterranean chambers, like some inner rooms of the Great Pyramid, as potential evidence for such clean lighting. They see the relief not as myth but as a technical manual carved in stone. Egyptologists, however, offer a profoundly different reading, one rooted not in electrical engineering, but in the rich symbolic language of Egyptian cosmology. In their view, the scene has nothing to do with artificial light. The pear-shaped object is not a bulb, but a stylized depiction of a lotus flower, the ancient symbol of creation and rebirth. The snake emerging from it is the serpent god Harsomptus, a manifestation of the sun god, representing the primeval life force bursting into being. The entire enclosure symbolizes the protective womb of the sky goddess Nut, or the watery chaos of Nun, from which the sun is born each day. The connecting cord is not a wire but a symbolic tether, and the box is a divine shrine or a representation of the Jed pillar, a symbol of stability. The baboon and the air god are attendants to this moment of cosmic genesis. This orthodox explanation sees the relief as a religious text in stone, depicting the moment of creation itself, the spark of life emerging from the sacred lotus. This stark clash of interpretations is where the true mystery lies. It is not a mystery of ancient technology, but a mystery of modern perception. The Dendera relief becomes a perfect case study in how we project our own world onto the past. We are creatures of the electric age, so when we see an elongated shape with a filament and a cable, we cannot help but see a light bulb. Our brains are wired to find familiar patterns, especially technological ones. But the ancient Egyptian artist was a creature of a mythic age, where the world was explained through gods, symbols, and cyclical natural forces. To them, The most powerful light was not from a filament, but from the sun god Ra being born anew each dawn from a celestial lotus. This does not make their understanding less sophisticated. It simply makes it different, a complex language of metaphor we must learn to read on its own terms. The Dendera light controversy illuminates a critical challenge in unraveling ancient mysteries. It forces us to ask whether we are discovering a forgotten truth or simply seeing our own reflection in the polished stone of history. The temple wall holds its secret, but the secret might be about us and how the stories we tell about the past are always, in part, stories about the present. A different kind of carving emerged from the Peruvian desert, one that seemed to rewrite the entire history of life on Earth. In the 1960s, a physician named Javier Cabrera was presented with a strange stone by a local farmer near the town of Ica. It was a river rock, but its surface was covered with fine engravings depicting a human figure fighting what was unmistakably a Tyrannosaurus rex. This was the first of what would become known as the Ica stones, and soon Cabrera amassed a collection of over 15,000 of them. The images carved into these andesite rocks were nothing short of fantastic. They showed humans riding on the backs of stegosaurs and triceratops like domesticated animals. Other stones illustrated complex medical procedures, including heart transplants and cesarean sections performed with apparent precision. Some even depicted astronomers using telescopes to gaze at comets and celestial bodies. If authentic, these stones would be the most explosive archaeological discovery ever made, proving that humans coexisted with dinosaurs and possessed advanced medical and astronomical knowledge in the distant past. The stones became a sensation in fringe circles, held up as absolute proof of a lost civilization or even ancient alien contact. The mystery, however, unraveled not through scientific debunking, but through a confession. In the 1970s, the very farmer who had supplied most of the stones to Dr. Cabrera, a man named Basilio Ushuaia, admitted the entire collection was a hoax. He and his family had created the engravings themselves using a simple dental drill, then aged the stones by baking them in cow dung to give them a patina of antiquity. He confessed he had crafted the designs after looking at comic books, textbooks, and popular magazines, feeding the doctor exactly what he wanted to see. This admission, backed by the demonstrable methods, should have ended the story, yet it did not. The Ica stones remain incredibly popular in alternative history circles, their images circulating in books and documentaries that often omit or dismiss the forger's confession. This persistence reveals a deeper mystery than the stones themselves. Why are we so drawn to forgeries? The creation of such artifacts is often driven by a mix of motives, from financial gain, as Ushuaia sold the stones to an eager buyer, to a desire for fame, or even a mischievous attempt to expose the gullibility of experts. But their enduring appeal speaks to a powerful human need. Forgeries like the Ica stones provide a tangible, physical answer to our biggest questions, offering a simple, dramatic story that fills the gaps in our complex, incomplete historical record. They muddy the waters of genuine inquiry because they are designed to be believable, to scratch an itch for wonder. They serve as a crucial cautionary tale, reminding us that the most seductive mysteries are not always the ones buried by time, but sometimes the ones planted deliberately, waiting for us to wish them into truth. Scattered across the misty highlands of northern Laos lies a landscape that feels less like a burial ground and more like a giant's abandoned pantry. This is the Plain of Jars, a vast archaeological zone where thousands of massive stone jars, some standing nearly 10 feet tall and weighing several tons, lie in haunting clusters across the grass and under the forest canopy. Carved from solid sandstone and granite, these jars are simple in form, with straight sides, rounded bottoms, and no decorative markings, yet their sheer number and scale create an atmosphere of profound mystery. They were created by an unknown Iron Age culture, with the oldest dating back as far as 1,200 years before the Common Era. Their purpose has long been theorized, with the most compelling evidence pointing to a complex funeral practice. Human remains, including bone fragments and teeth, have been found buried in the ground around and inside many of the jars, alongside grave goods like beads, pottery, and iron tools. This suggests the jars were not for storing food or water, but for the dead. The leading hypothesis is a practice known as excarnation, where bodies would be placed inside the jars to decompose, or the bones of the deceased would be stored there after the flesh had been removed by the elements or by cultural rituals. The jars, then, would be monumental urns standing as permanent stone guardians for a community's ancestors. However, unraveling this mystery is fraught with a modern and deadly peril. During the Vietnam War, the region was subjected to intense bombing campaigns, and to this day, the Plain of Jars remains littered with millions of pieces of unexploded ordnance. This tragic legacy has severely limited archaeological excavation, making large areas too dangerous to access. Researchers must work in carefully cleared sections, knowing that just beyond their survey lines, thousands of jars sit in zones where a single misplaced step could be catastrophic. This danger adds a layer of poignant urgency to the mystery, as scientists race against time and threat to study what they can. Even within the safe zones, the logistical puzzle is immense. The stone for these jars was not local. Geochemical analysis shows the granite and sandstone were sourced from quarries several miles away. How did an Iron Age people with no wheels, no draft animals, and only simple metal tools transport multi-ton blocks of stone across rugged, forested terrain? The current theory involves a combination of ingenious methods, likely using ropes, wooden rollers, and immense communal labor to inch each massive jar to its final resting place. The carving itself, achieving such uniform shapes and smooth interiors with primitive chisels and hammers, represents another staggering investment of time and skill. Each jar is a testament to a society that devoted enormous resources to honoring their dead, yet they left no written records, no carvings of kings or gods, only these silent stone sentinels. The Plain of Jars is a monument to both ancient reverence and modern conflict, a site where the quest to understand a forgotten funeral rite is forever shadowed by the scars of a much more recent war, leaving its full story still buried both in earth and in peril. The silent stone sentinels of Laos give way to a symphony of shattered precision high in the Bolivian Andes. At an altitude that steals the breath, the ruins of Puma Punku present not a mystery of purpose, but a staggering enigma of method. This site, part of the greater Tiwanaku complex, is not a collection of buildings but a sprawling architectural graveyard, a field where giant stone blocks lie scattered as if by a god's tantrum. These are not rough-hewn monoliths. Each piece is a masterpiece of geometry and craftsmanship that defies the timeline of its creation, estimated to be over 1,000 years old, long before the Inca Empire rose. The most iconic are the so-called H-shaped blocks carved from incredibly hard andesite and red granite. Their form is deceptively simple, but their execution is flawless. Each block features notches, rebates, and channels cut with such exacting precision that the edges are razor-sharp, the corners perfect 90-degree angles, and the surfaces so flat they could be mistaken for modern machined metal. Some of these blocks weigh over 100 tons. The stone itself is the first part of the puzzle. Andesite is a volcanic rock with a hardness just below that of diamond, a brutally unforgiving material to work. Yet at Puma Punku, it appears to have been manipulated like soft clay. The stonecutters created complex interlocking joints, some with as many as 80 individual faces on a single block, designed to fit together with other stones without the use of mortar. They carved intricate, shallow channels and decorative recesses with walls that are perfectly parallel and bases that are perfectly flat, running in straight lines for several feet before terminating with a crisp, clean edge. How was this achieved? The standard archaeological explanation involves immense patience and simple tools. The theory is that workers used stone hammers to peck away at the surface, then ground it smooth with sand and water, a process that could take generations for a single block. They may have used copper tools, though copper is far softer than andesite, requiring constant resharpening and unimaginable labor. For transportation, the consensus points to large labor forces using ropes, ramps, and rollers to move the stones from quarries many miles away. Yet for many who study the site, this conventional explanation strains against the evidence. The precision is simply too great, the tolerances too tight. The flatness of the surfaces and the perfection of the internal corners seem to require something more than handheld pounding stones. This has led to more speculative theories of lost technologies. Some researchers point to the possibility of advanced stone cutting techniques, perhaps involving the use of specialized stone or metal alloys harder than what we have found in the archaeological record. Others wonder about the use of plant-based acids or other chemical agents to soften the stone temporarily for shaping, a method hinted at in some indigenous legends. The most controversial suggestions involve tools or knowledge from a much older, sophisticated culture. Puma Punku does not whisper of its builders. It shouts of their skill in a language of angles and planes we can measure but not replicate with the tools we attribute to them. It stands as a stark reminder that patient labor can achieve miracles, but it also forces us to ask if we have underestimated the innovative spirit of ancient engineers, whose specific techniques for conquering stone may be as lost to us as the names of the masters who wielded them. Their mastery of stone seems to have traveled across an ocean of isolation. On one of the most remote inhabited islands on Earth, a culture performed an act of monumental devotion that ended in silent catastrophe. Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, is synonymous with the moe, those brooding stone giants gazing inland with solemn, elongated faces. But the postcard image is a lie of perspective. Those famous heads are not just heads, they are full-bodied statues, many buried up to their necks in centuries of soil and rubble, with detailed torsos, arms, and hands resting across their stomachs. Unearthing them reveals figures standing as tall as 33 feet and weighing up to 80 tons, each one carved from a single block of compressed volcanic ash from the quarry at Ronoroku. The real mystery is not their creation but their journey. How did a few thousand people with no wheels, no large animals, and no metal move these colossal figures up to 11 miles across rugged terrain from the quarry to their final ceremonial platforms called ahu along the coast? For decades, the dominant theory involved a Herculean effort of brute force. Researchers imagined the statues being laid flat on wooden sledges or rollers, pulled by vast teams with ropes over log roads, a process requiring enormous amounts of timber and labor. This theory fed directly into a tragic narrative of the island's collapse, where a society so obsessed with statue building deforested its entire island, leading to ecological and social ruin. But a revolutionary experiment challenged that story. Archaeologists Terry Hunt and Carl Lipo proposed a far more elegant method, one hinted at in local oral tradition. They suggested the moai were not dragged but walked. In a stunning demonstration, a team used just 3 strong ropes and a replica moai. One set of ropes was attached to the back to tilt the statue forward, another set to the front to control the forward swing, and a third to the sides for stabilization. With rhythmic, coordinated pulls, the team made the statue rock from side to side, its curved base allowing it to pivot with each step. The massive stone figure appeared to walk itself upright across the landscape, guided by a surprisingly small crew. This method would explain the many statues found abandoned along ancient roads, toppled face down, as if they had fallen during transport. Yet, even this walking theory has its critics, who question whether the fragile stone of the real moai could have withstood the stresses of such a journey without breaking. The debate continues, a testament to the ingenious and possibly multiple solutions the Rapa Nui devised, but moving them was only half the battle. Once at the Ahu, the statues then had to be erected. The leading theory here involves building a stone ramp and carefully pivoting the statue upward using levers and ropes, a painstaking and dangerous process. Once upright, the final touch was added, the pucao, those distinctive red stone top knots weighing up to 12 tons, which were then somehow lifted and placed on top of the heads. The sheer scale of this operation, repeated nearly 900 times, speaks of a society unified by a powerful, driving purpose. But what was that purpose? The prevailing view is that the moai were deified representations of important ancestors. Erected on coastal Ahu, their backs to the sea, they were believed to project their spiritual power, their mana, inward to protect and nourish the living communities. Their eyes, once inlaid with white coral and obsidian, were not installed until the statue was standing, a ceremony that was believed to awaken its watchful spirit. This cycle of creation, however, did not last. The island's story took a dark turn. Evidence points to a society that did indeed push its environment to the brink, with deforestation, soil erosion, and the loss of seabird populations. Coupled with the immense resource drain of the statue cult, social structures fractured, clan warfare erupted, and in the conflict, the moai were systematically toppled. The quarry at Rono Roroku was abandoned, leaving nearly 400 statues in various stages of completion, frozen in time like a workshop of ghosts. The walking giants fell, and their silent gaze turned from the living to the sky. The moai are not just statues, they are the physical record of a people's ambition, their spiritual beliefs, and their ultimate hubris, a warning carved in stone about the delicate balance between a culture's dreams and the island that must sustain them. The fallen moai of Easter Island represent a mystery resolved by time, but some enigmas are being born right now on the very seafloor we have mapped with satellites. In the summer of 2011, a Swedish ocean exploration team named Ocean X was using side-scan sonar to search for sunken shipwrecks in the Baltic Sea. What appeared on their screens was no ordinary wreck. Nearly 300 feet below the surface, their sonar painted the image of a massive, circular object about 200 feet across. It had a distinct, rounded top, a thick central column, and what looked like a long, trailing track behind it, as if it had skidded to a stop on the seabed. To the stunned crew, the shape was unmistakable. It looked like the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars, or perhaps a classic flying saucer. This was the Baltic Sea anomaly, and its discovery ignited a firestorm of speculation in the age of the Internet. The team reported bizarre phenomena when they were directly above the object. Their electrical equipment, including a satellite phone, would inexplicably fail, only to function again when they moved away. Divers who later visited the site brought back photographs of a strange, rock-like formation covered in what appeared to be soot, with odd, right-angled features and stair-like structures. The images were grainy, dark, and profoundly unsettling. Here, it seemed, was a genuine, unidentified submerged object, a possible crashed craft of unknown origin resting in the cold, dark silence. The allure was instantaneous and powerful. In a world where every corner of the globe feels explored, the anomaly offered a fresh, tantalizing unknown, a mystery playing out in real time with sonar pings and dive videos. It fueled theories of a secret Nazi anti-gravity device, a prehistoric monument swallowed by rising seas, or, most popularly, an extraterrestrial vehicle. The mystery was amplified by the very medium of its discovery, a digital sonar image open to endless interpretation and sharing online. However, as often happens, further scientific scrutiny began to peel back the layers of the mystery. Geologists and marine archaeologists who examined the data and subsequent samples proposed a far more terrestrial, though still fascinating, explanation. The Baltic Sea region was ground zero for massive glacial activity during the last ice age. As continents of ice scraped over the bedrock, they could leave behind enormous, isolated glacial deposits called dropstones. They also carved and scarred the underlying rock in strange ways. The leading hypothesis is that the anomaly is a rare but natural geological formation. It could be a large glacial erratic, a single giant boulder deposited by a melting iceberg sitting alone on the flat seabed. Alternatively, it might be an outcrop of volcanic basalt shaped by glacial ice into an unusual form. The soot-like coating, possibly manganese crust, a common precipitate in deep-sea environments. The right angles, natural fracturing in the rock, the electrical interference. A coincidence, perhaps caused by a local magnetic anomaly from the dense mineral content of the rock itself. The Baltic Sea anomaly is a perfect case study in how modern mystery is born. It is generated not in the shadows of antiquity, but in the pixelated glow of a sonar screen. It thrives on ambiguous data, the kind that is just clear enough to suggest pattern, but just fuzzy enough to resist definitive explanation. Our brains, wired to see faces in clouds and ships in nebulae, eagerly fill in the blanks with the most exciting narrative available. This object taps into a deep, persistent longing, the hope that there are still monumental secrets waiting to be found, even in our mapped and monitored world. It shows that the allure of the unknown is not a relic of the past, but a permanent part of the human psyche, now fueled by technology that gives us glimpses of wonders we can label, but cannot yet fully understand. The anomaly may ultimately be a rock, but the story we built around it is a mirror, reflecting our timeless desire for the world to be stranger and more wonderful than it appears. But the most recent entry in our catalogue of enigmas was not carved by an ancient hand or buried by millennia of silt. It stood in plain sight in rural Elbert County, Georgia, a stark granite monument that appeared almost overnight in the modern world. Erected in 1980, the Georgia Guidestones consisted of 6 massive slabs over 19 feet tall, arranged astronomically to track the sun. They were inscribed with 10 guidelines for humanity, carved in 8 modern languages including English, Spanish, and Swahili, with shorter messages in 4 ancient scripts like Babylonian cuneiform and Egyptian hieroglyphics at the top. The guidelines themselves were the source of immediate and enduring controversy. They began with seemingly noble aims, like maintaining humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature, and guiding reproduction wisely to improve fitness and diversity. But the first directive, calling for a global population of under 500 million, was a staggering figure, implying a reduction of over 90% of the people alive today. This, coupled with vague calls for unity and tempered reason, struck many not as a hopeful blueprint, but as a chilling manifesto for a depopulated, controlled future. The mystery was not its age, but its anonymity. The monument was commissioned by a man using the pseudonym R.C. Christian, who claimed to represent a small group of loyal Americans. He paid for the project in full with cashier's checks, and the true identities of the sponsors were never revealed, guarded to this day by the local bank that handled the transaction. This deliberate secrecy transformed the Guidestones from a curious public art project into a lightning rod for speculation. Were they the work of a secret society, a neo-pagan cult, or environmental extremists? Conspiracy theories flourished, labeling them everything from a guidebook for a new world order to satanic instructions for a post-apocalyptic age. For over 4 decades, they stood as America's most controversial modern megalith, a physical cipher whose meaning was debated as fiercely as any ancient text. Then, in 2022, the mystery turned to violence. In July, the monument was severely damaged in a nighttime explosion, a deliberate act of destruction. Later, the remaining stones were completely dismantled and removed by the county, erasing the structure from the landscape. Even in its demise, it generated more questions than answers. The Guidestones fit our theme perfectly because they prove that the ingredients of an enduring mystery, anonymous creators, ambiguous messages, and a purpose shrouded in shadow, are not confined to the distant past. They can be manufactured in the 20th century using a quarry and a bank account. We are left to wonder, were the guidelines a sincere, if radical, warning about sustainability from a concerned group? Or were they, as many feared, a dark prophecy etched in stone? The stones are gone now, but the debate they ignited remains, a modern testament to the fact that when a message is carved in granite but whispered from behind a veil, it will haunt the imagination long after the last fragment is hauled away. From misplaced coins to megalithic computers, our journey has taken us across continents and millennia, into the silent workshops of forgotten engineers and the cosmic observatories of ancient priests. We have seen stone spheres whose purpose vanished with their creators, a book written in a language that does not exist, and temples that challenge the very timeline of civilization itself. These are not mere footnotes in a dusty textbook, they are gaping holes in our story, each one a testament to the staggering ingenuity and profound mystery of the human past. What does this incredible range of puzzles, from the microscopic carvings on a genetic disc to the continent-spanning lines of Nazca, truly tell us? They reveal a history that is not a straight, well-lit road, but a vast, shadowy forest filled with echoes. Every unexplained artifact, every impossible structure, is a reminder that our current knowledge is a flickering lantern in that darkness, illuminating only a small circle of the path behind us. They speak to a universal human drive, not just to build and create, but to communicate, to reach for the stars, to leave a mark that shouts across the ages. We were here, and this is what we wondered about. Our frustration in not understanding their specific message is in itself a form of connection, a shared longing to know. So now the question turns to you. Which of these 25 mysteries captured your imagination the most? Was it the celestial clockwork of the Antikythera Mechanism, the silent, walking giants of Easter Island, or the submerged geometric puzzle of Yonaguni? Let us know in the comments below and share your own theories about these ancient enigmas. If unraveling history's greatest secrets fascinates you, be sure to subscribe and join us for more deep dives into the forgotten corners of our world. Remember, the past is never a closed book, it is an ongoing excavation, and the next great discovery, the one that rewrites everything we think we know, could be waiting just beneath the next layer of soil or the next sweep of a sonar beam. The search continues.